The news was broken to the media by a spokesperson for the so-called Free Syrian Army. Luraya Mekdad has given no additional details about the type of weapons or the countries providing them. The spokesperson added that more shipments of other weapons are also on their way to end up in the hands of the militants. The influx of new arms comes right after British media revealed that Saudi Arabia has sent the first batch of anti-tank missiles to the insurgents in the flashpoint city of Aleppo. Also last week, the US and the UK announced that they both decided to provide the militants with more sophisticated weapons. Meanwhile, just days after Russian President Vladimir Putin accused the UK of arming cannibal insurgents in Syria, once again, he has challenged the Western project of sending weapons to insurgents in the Arab country. Now, Putin, who was speaking at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, touched on U.S. double standards in dealing with terrorist groups. He questioned Washington's delivery of arms to militants as contradictory to recognizing the same groups as terrorists. The Russian president also advised the West to think of where those weapons end up and what role the militants will play in the future. Intifat Gambar joins us from Beirut in order to share his thoughts on this. Intifat Gambar, let's go with what Putin has said. First of all, he has questioned Washington's arming of insurgents as contradictory to recognizing the same groups as terrorists. Do you agree with him?
Yes, I do agree with him. In fact, there was an incident which was quite embarrassing to Senator McCain, the American senator who visited Syria and had a photograph with some of the insurgents who turned to be are the same, identified as the kidnappers of the 11 Lebanese after he went back. And only one day before this picture, he made a statement that the United States can distinguish between the good guys and the bad guys in his terms. And the second day, he has issued an apology for taking a picture with terrorist kidnappers, which basically assuring that the United States is not capable of distinguishing between the terrorists, and these weapons will go into the hands of the same group which is banned in and considered as a terrorist group by the United States itself and the West, which is reflects a great degree of hypocrisy and confusion about the situation in Syria.
And for Gambar, let's look at it in layman's terms. If you were to make a column and put on the right the positives of arming the insurgents, and on the left of this column the negative consequences that would come out of arming them, don't you think that that outweighs the pro of arming insurgents? I mean, this obsession with having Assad go, at what cost? What about the aftermath? You would think that the West and its regional allies are thinking about that. Putin has come out and said, you know, you're going to arm these insurgents, but these arms are going to end up backfiring on you on your soil in Europe.
Well, I tell you, Kaveh, I mean, the arming of the insurgency and now is a myth. This has been happening since the beginning of the conflict. Where do those insurgency getting their weapons from? These weapons are coming from Saudi Arabia through Turkey, and some was through Lebanon before al-Qusayr was liberated, and other sources. And there was even news about diverting some Ukrainian weapons deal by the Saudis to the insurgency. So the issue of arming the insurgency, it has already happened, and it's happening as we speak now. I don't think it has changed anything on the ground. I don't think any additional arming will do change, as it's very clear. Syria and its allies are taking the initiative, and they are making gains on the grounds every day, starting by the al-Qusayr and afterward now probably Halab. So I don't think this is going to do anything. But is this weapon may end up in a city in Europe or the United States? It's very possible. We've seen that before, and I think it will happen probably now. I think the Europeans and the West are making a huge mistake by arming the opposition. I may as well add, there's now a notion in the US Congress to have a congressional resolution to ban these weapons to go to Syrian rebels, which also shed the light on how this issue is controversial, and even within the United States itself there are controversy and serious discussion about it.
Good to talk to you, political analyst Intifat Gambar, talking to us from Beirut. Thank you. Well, the Israeli President Shimon Peres has backed the U.S. plan to arm insurgents fighting the Syrian government. In an interview, Shimon Peres described Washington's decision to arm the insurgents as, quote, wise, saying that the United States does not have any other choice. The Israeli president made the remarks days after Washington announced that it would start supplying weapons to militants in Syria. Western-backed calls have grown for arms supply to militants in the country. Reports say the so-called Free Syrian Army has received T-62 tanks from Libya. Nearly 3,000 Syrian Kurds are reportedly being trained in Jordan to join the insurgents fighting Damascus.